Welcome back to Frank's Model Aviation Workshop. This will be episode 1 of the Goldberg Sukhoi SU26MX. We're going to do a complete build series on this airplane just like I do the other ones. Step by step through the manual. If I feel like something could be changed or improved on, I'll include that in the build series and explain why I'm changing it, if there's anything. This will be the first time I build a Sukhoi, so I'm kind of excited about that. So I got to cut a piece of drywall, a fresh piece. My last piece had 4 airplanes built on it and it's a little bit worn out. So I'm going to cut a fresh piece of drywall, put some fresh sandpaper on my sanding bars, and we will get started on this airplane. And hopefully it turns out just as good as the rest of them. So I think it might. So if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. Hit that notification bell so that you can be notified of future episodes of this build series. And please like and share my videos. It just might help somebody get their airplane finished and in the air. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, the drywall's cut. Still have to do the sandpaper on the T-bars. But for all of you Goldberg purists out there, of which I am one, I'm going to take these plans to Staples and have them copied twice. I like to have 2 fresh copies. One I can cut up, one I can save, and then save the originals. So I'm going to do that, and as soon as I get the copies made, we're going to start this build. Okay, so everything's set. I got all the parts sorted for the vertical fin, rudder, elevator, and horizontal stabilizer. Unfortunately, my kit was short 1 horizontal stabilizer sheet, and one of my wing sheets, there's like 3 inches busted off the end of it. It's missing. So I contacted my supplier for balsa wood to see if they can make 5/64 inch thickness balsa wood. Otherwise I can get some sheets. It's no big deal, but I have to go 3/32. And if that's the case, I'm going to join them and then sand the 3/32 sheet down to the 5/64 thickness, which I'm not too thrilled about, but you know, you got to do what you got to do. Times are tough in the RC building industry. So I'm going to get set up and we are going to start building the horizontal stabilizer. Won't be able to sheet it, but I can get it framed up. I can sheet half of it. The other half will have to wait until after I get that balsa wood. And I can complete the fin and rudder. I can do the elevators as well. So we will get started and see how far we get. Oh, but first, Goldberg likes to have you build these bevel gauges and rounding gauges. So I'm going to build those first because that way they're cured and ready to use whenever whenever you get ready to bevel and round. I don't like to have my fin and rudder and everything framed up, ready to sand. I got to wait on glue to dry. So we'll do that first. That way it'll be ready to go whenever it's time to sand. So I'm going to start off with the easy one. That's the T&A ones. So what I like to do is this is going to bend, so I want to put a piece of tape on the back side of this first. That'll hold those, straight as you can get it. So when you bend it, it'll stay on that same curve there. So that'll be that. So I'm gonna sand them a little bit. everybody else use these things, or you just kind of eyeball it? So now we'll cut these free. So basically just put these on here like this. Line them up with your marks. Like that, basically. So what I'm going to do first is run a bead of glue just on this edge here. I'll set that aside to dry, and I'll do the other one same way. Now we're going to build the rounding tools, and this is different than any other rounding tool I've ever made by Goldberg. I'm sure I'm going to run into a lot of different stuff because this is all new to me. These get glued on like that at a 90. Don't like that. See how it's bowed? I have to make some modifications. Let's see, I got an idea. Okay, I may break this thing, so if I do, feel free to laugh. Here, just like that. So I'm going to use that as a spacer. And we are going to glue these on. Put a bevel on that so that it'll have a better glue joint. Now I'm going to run a bead down inside here. Now all these will get a second coat once the glue's dried. So these ones I'm going to put a bead right here. All right, those are mocked up. So I'm sitting here scratching my head over all this stuff, and I got my stab joiner here, which is a 1/4 inch plus the 2 1/32, and it just doesn't match up with the 1/4 inch platform. It just, well, you can see I got a 1/16 more. And see, what is supposed to happen is all this is supposed to be a 1/4 inch, and then the 2 5/64 sheets go on, and that makes your 3/8. However, this should be 3/16 plus these two would make your 1/4 inch. And then I'm looking at the horn mounts. They're supposed to be 3/16 laminated together to make the 3/8, but these are a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of research, wondering why it's like that. I'm perplexed, but I'm going to figure it out. If I have to cut all these out to 3/16, it's just the horn mounts and this stab doubler that's throwing me off. because the pieces that make the elevator tips and stuff like that, and rudder, they're 3/16. That's the right thickness. So those are going to get doubled to make 3/8. So I need to do a little research, and I will be right back. So let's talk a little bit about buying vintage, out of production, or discontinued kits off of eBay or RC groups or swap meets, wherever you buy your stuff. When you buy these kits, there's no guarantee that all the parts are there, or that the parts that you have there are the right sizes or are good enough for you to build or whatever. You can build with them, but I'm always searching for that perfect kit, and they're like a unicorn. They're not out there, so you have to make it as perfect as possible. So one thing I want to discuss is the die cut pieces that come in these kits. Now, back in the day when I started building these things, I would just throw these kits together. If they were close, I would just go with it. But because I have a severe case of OCD when it comes to my airplanes these days, I decided, because all these pieces, the balance tabs, the top and bottom of the rudder, on the Sukhoi I'm talking about, they're all doubled. And I match these pieces up to the plan, and they don't match up very well. So I'll bring you in and show you what I mean. But what I'm going to do is, I went to Hobby Lobby. It's the only place I can find the balsa wood that I need on a short notice. And I'm missing a sheet for the horizontal stab, and one of my sheets for the wing is broken. So I called up my supplier, and I'm going to have some 5/64 sheets made. I'm going to redo all the sheeting on this kit for the rudder fin, the fin, the horizontal stabilizer, and all of the wing sheeting will all be new 1 or 5/64 balsa. I'll feel a little better about it that way. Plus, this balsa is old and brittle, and a lot of it's sea grain, and sea grain wood does not bend; it'll break. So I'll bring you in. I'll show you I'll show you how these pieces match up. But what I did, I went ahead and traced them onto some paper. I used tracing paper. Then I taped the tracing paper onto some printer paper, and I Xeroxed this off a number of times. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these patterns, spray mount adhesive them onto my fresh balsa wood, and cut out exact size pieces for all the tail, the top and bottom of the rudder, and the balance tabs, and that wing or the stab joiner in the front here that's supposed to be 3/16, but it was a 1/4 inch in this kit. So, and what I'm going to do, instead of cutting out a whole bunch of 3/16 pieces, I'm going to glue 2 sheets of 3/16 together, and only have to cut what I need to build a plane. I don't have to do like 2 rudder tops, 2 rudder bottoms, 4 balance tabs, and it'll just make it a lot easier. And they will be perfectly matched, because I'm going to saw them out with my jigsaw. It'll be a perfect fit. So I'll bring you in and show you how these match up. And while I was pondering what I was doing, I went ahead and I cut all of my pieces, my sticks, for the perimeter. So they are all ready to pin and glue in, but I don't want to start that until I get all of my 3/16 pieces cut out. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So as you can see, as I got this marked as best I can where it's supposed to go, it's short here, and it's not matching. This side doesn't matter, but this really bugs me, the outer perimeter. I want that to be exactly the way it's supposed to be. So I'll show you here. You can see how it's off by almost 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to redo all these pieces because I know the rest of them ain't going to fit either. I'll show you. These gusset pieces, although they are the wrong thickness, so I have to redo them anyway. This is not right. They're pretty much okay here, but this edge is not right. I'd have to, in order to fix it, I had to move it up and in and sand this edge and this edge until it's perfect. So instead of doing all that, I got to redo them anyway. I'm going to do them all on fresh 3/16 balsa wood. So we'll get set up. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, so basically we're going to start by gluing these together and weighing them down on this flat building board. I'll weight them and let that set. And then I'll spray mount the patterns with the correct grain onto this, and then we will saw them out using my scroll saw. So let's get going. That won't take too long. So basically on this, I just need to do that on 3/16. The rest of these are going to be the double. I need to make 2 of these, 2 of these, and 1 of these and 1 of these. So we'll get set up and do that. Okay, so I got the spray mount on here and it's tagging up. So I want to take and cut those out. So that grain will go like that. And I want to try to use, the balsa wood best as I can do so I'm not wasting a lot of it. Okay, so now we'll cut out one of these. this stab joiner I'm going to place down here because I know that it's not glued together. Rudder top, rudder bottom, balance tab left and right, and elevator horn mount left and right. That should be all I need, and I got my stab joiner down here. So I'm going to get set up, get my scroll saw mounted to my table, and we will cut these out. Okay, so the instructions say to glue the stab joiner doublers to each side of the stab joiner as shown above. So I'll go ahead and do that. So here's my new stab joiner, new and doublers from the kit. So I will glue these on, matching them up to this edge because that's the only edge that really counts. Always want to test fit everything first before you glue. So I'm going to take and flatten out that leading edge. Test fit it to the plan. And that edges need trimmed off. What I like to do is test fit my parts against the plan. There's really no way to pin this down, but try to. But I don't think I'm going to be able to. Let me get my super duper. This is my super duper pin forcer inner. We'll try it. Need to get me some, either clean these pins up or get me some new ones because these things are getting worn out. Oh yeah, it's going in. Okay, so let's, next is this piece here. And I always like to place the center plate and this trailing edge piece on to make sure it matches up to the plan. As you can see, it's angled, so we'll have to take some off the edge. Wrong piece. That looks like it's going to be it. Now I'm using this straight edge here because I want that trailing edge to be perfectly straight. So I'm going to pin that straight edge in place. Okay, I'll go ahead and glue this on. And I'm making sure that I have it as centered as possible. I'm going to mark the edge for placement. So I made 2 marks, that way I know where to place it. I'm not centering it here, I'm centering it down here where these 2 trusses go. And end grain balsa soaks up a lot of glue, so I put a bead, wait a second, let it soak in a little bit, and then reinforce it a little bit. Might as well save my thumbs. So the next piece to go on is this piece. So I'm going to mark it and add the glue to it right there. Next we're going to glue this piece on. Now I'm going to do this quickly because I want to make sure it's lined up right with the end. Now I'm going to put this back in. this one's sure that that trailing edge is exactly straight. And you don't want to put a pin where it's going to get in the way of your trusses. So that's that. We are going to move on to the leading edge. Next, we're going to glue this leading edge piece on and this side piece. I'm matching it up with the center. And while I'm at it, I'm going to mark this top. So now that's set. I'm going to glue this leading edge on first. All of my pinholes will be filled in the end as well. So now we'll go ahead and put this piece in. I'm going to match it just to the outside of that black line, and then I will sand it on that end to make it perfectly flat. Next, we're going to put this leading edge piece in. This time I'm going to glue the end as well. And you'll notice how that's kind of warped. Once it's all glued together, it'll be flat. And I made it a little bit long so I can sand it to the exact size I need. And as I glue this stuff, I'm pushing it toward the ruler. Or pin it, I mean, as I pin it, I'm pushing it towards the ruler. That way I know it's perfectly straight. Next we'll put this last piece in. So I'm just using my miter box as a tool to get it the perfect size. So I just, because it's 90 degrees this way and 90 degrees this way, you'll have a perfect square piece. All right, there's the perimeter. Now we pin and glue the trussing. Those are 1/8 by 1/4 by 20. So I'm going to use the stiffest. So we'll use these two, and we'll go ahead and I'll show you how I'm going to do it. These two are whole, just one bevel. And these are one bevel, two, the ones we're going to put in. Except for this one, it's got two bevels here. So we will get these all put in. Pretty self-explanatory. Just watch your angles. And I always like to start with the center. You know, do them both centers. I will zoom out so you can see what I'm doing. So I'll be cutting these off camera. There's going to be two bevels on this one. Two bevels meaning there's a cut this way and a cut this way. So I cut one side and then I cut the other. So basically I'm just going to cut the corner off of this. And these trusses do not require pins. But they do need to fit in there just right. You don't want them to fit in there super tight because it'll cause the stab to want to warp. Basically what I'm doing is just sanding it until it fits in on this bevel here perfectly, and I'm happy with that. Now we will cut this angle. Okay. So we'll glue that in. What I will do is put a pin right here just to kind of hold it towards that, because there's nothing holding it this way yet. Okay, that's one. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them in fast speed. Okay, so all the trusses are in. We're looking good. Now what I'm going to do is go and put a bead of glue in every corner. That'll just strengthen the trusses in every joint. Take that out now. I'm just getting rid of all the excess that's on the top there, or smoothing it out a little bit so when we go to sand it'll be easier to sand. So that's the horizontal stabilizer. Now I'm done with this until I get my sheeting in the mail, and we'll continue with that. I think the next step is the sheeting. Okay, so here's the dealio. I'm still waiting on my balsa wood sheeting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to unpin the stab and sand it to the perfect shape, to the plan, and set it aside. And we're going to continue going with the elevators. We'll get the elevators built up, the fin frame minus the sheeting, and then the rudder. So all I'll have to do whenever the balsa wood gets here is sheet the stab and fin. So we'll get set up and we'll continue this build because I'm going stir crazy waiting for that thing. So anyway, let's get going. Okay, so let's get this unpinned. Cool thing about this tool, it has an unpinner piece on it. I don't want to hear it. I know what you're thinking. So now we're going to basically straighten up these edges. Line it up to the plan. And I'm going to be using my permagrit tool. So I'm going to be moving the permagrit, not the stab. And this permagrit is going to make a perfect 90-degree joint here. That's pretty much it. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is go take my T-bar sander and lightly sand the top. This ply is standing a little proud above the 1/4 inch, so I'm going to try to sand that down close to it as I can get without sanding any of the rest of the wood. I'll be using a 220 grit. Sandbar. You don't want to just go buck wild on it. You want to stop every now and then and feel. That looks beautiful. And it's nice and strong. Hardly any flex in that. So you can tell it's changing color here. I'm taking a layer of plywood off. So now what I want to do, I want to put this up on here. These are 2 layers of sheeting. That should equal that. And it don't. It's a little bit too thick. But whenever I join sheets, I sand both sides, so that's going to take a little bit off. So it's going to be close. Close enough for government work, as Dad used to say. He was a long-time government employee. Yeah, and it's even all the way around, so. Yep. So we're good. I'm going to leave it at that, and we'll set this aside. I don't want to be too aggressive with the sandpaper because you take too much off, you're not going to be able to put balsa wood back. You're going to have to put filler back, and that's not as strong as balsa. So we'll set this aside, get the wax paper back out, and we will do the elevators. So right now I'm setting up to make sure that I want enough of this piece sticking out beyond so that I can sand it to the line, and these pieces are going to get cut past the line as well. I want it to be nice and smooth, not any dips or angles or whatever. So I've been messing around with this. I think I got it where I want it. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to pin this piece on with a straight edge. I'm going to use my big straight edge because it's thicker. I always use another stick over here to mark my piece. So that's where it needs to end. Now I need to cut it off here, and I'm going to cut it, like I said, slightly long so I can sand to it, and I'll be using my miter box. Now I can go ahead and pin this in place. So I'm going to start here on this end. I'll put another one on this end. Now I'll put the straight edge on. And pull it toward the straight edge and put one in the middle here. That way I know that my elevator is going to be perfectly straight right here where it meets up with the stab. I think what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece so I can just slide that in and glue it. So I'm just going to eyeball this. So when that's in there, I just go whoop, done. Okay, so I cut it too short. Measure twice, cut once. What I did was I lined it up on the inside instead of the outside, so I'll just have to cut it again. I just glued it back together. That's the thing about working with balsa wood, it's very forgiving. So now let's see what we got. There we go. That's better. So we will pin this piece in place. This part here is not crucial to being straight. I'm always into saving my thumbs. And I'm lining it up to the very outside of this black line. It's too bad that's not long enough because we could use that, because that would make a perfect angle right there. So I'm just lining it up on top and just drawing the angle. And this will be lined up as well on the outside of that line. I'll just cut it proud or long. Okay, we'll glue this side, and it, like I said before, the end grain always likes to soak up the glue, so make sure you got plenty on there. Okay, that's glued. I'll go ahead and put a pin in there. I know you're seeing the black line here, but I'm putting it to the outside of the black line, so. And because I have OCD, I will be putting a straight edge on the back end too. You'll have to forgive me. So now we can get this just perfect. That's going to be nice. Try not to glue yourself to the part. That doesn't require pins because, you know, it's just a flat piece of balsa wood. Alright, so I'm going to use this piece because it's already cut. What I'm doing is using my miter box to make it perfectly perpendicular and flat. That is daggum perfect. Okay, so I'm going to mark where glue is going to be going. Don't need to mark that, well, right here. I'm going to apply a little bit here. Some on the end. Some here. And some on this end. Just a little for now, till we get that thing in there. Now we got one truss left, or one stick left, so we will do this and those two pieces, and we'll save the scrap. Could do this first. I think I will. I'm using this scrap balsa to get my edge here where I want it. Now I'm not worried about, there's going to be a gap here. I'm not worried about that because I'll show you how I'm going to fix that. So now we're going to cut this piece here. And I'll be cutting it long, and we will sand to the perfect size. And because I have this angle here, I'm going to cut the square end, or sand the square end to the perfect size. That's perfect. Let's mark where the glue's got to go. We are almost done with the left elevator. I almost hate to put a pin in this. I'm afraid it's going to split. I'm not going to. So we won't put a pin in that. So now we will work on these trusses here, which are 3/16 by 3/8. put reinforcement in. Next is to glue this gusset in with some scrap 3/16, so I'm just going to have to eyeball it. I don't want it setting on the ground. I want to elevate it inside there, so I'm going to put some glue on it and just kind of eyeball it in place. Crooked as heck, but it's in there. Put a little reinforcement CA in there. And I'll do that on the other side when I flip it over. So when I sand the surface of this elevator, that's when I'm going to fill these gaps. And I'm going to use the old thin CA trick. I've used it many a times, and it works perfectly. So we will let this set up, and I'll unpin it, then we'll go to do the right side. Okay, so we got the left elevator done. I'm going to unpin it, put the glue reinforcement on the other side of that gusset, then we'll build the right elevator. And I found a stash of 1/16 balsa left over from my Ultima biplane build. So I think I'm going to seam some up and see what the thickness is compared to the elevators after they're sanded smooth. And if I'm happy with it, I'm going to go with gluing the 1/16 on here instead of waiting on that 5/64 sheet balsa. So we'll do that. So we'll get set up and get going on this thing. I like to save my hands any chance I can get. And I know it's probably going to stick to the wax paper, but that's okay. The world will not end. So I have this idea as I'm building this plane, and I'm always seeing comments about people wanting like templates and stuff. What I'm going to do as I'm building, since I have a spare set of plans, like a fuselage side for instance, I'm going to take the back side of one of the plans and trace it out on the back side. Do that, just fill the back side of the plans with the templates. So we'll see how that turns out. Ain't too bad. I'm going to give this a quick sanding. Here's where I'm going to fill that gap. Using the sanding dust. Alright, I like it. So now I'm going to true up these edges using my T-bar, my permagrit, and we'll get these straightened out. Now I'm checking it against the plan. So far, liking it. Once I get this perfect, we'll move on to the other side. Boy, that's really going to be nice. So this section here I made extra big, so I'm not going to do too much to this until I get it hinged up and taped onto this elevator. I want the stab hinged and taped, and then I'll form that leading edge and blend this in perfectly. But there it is, sanded. Can't do anything with it yet. I don't want to bevel it yet or slot it yet. I'm going to wait till I get the other one done. But I do need to do a reinforcement glue joint here. It's really, don't really need it. So we'll be happy with that. It's nice and smooth all the way around. All it needs is rounded. So I'm going to set this aside and we will continue building the right elevator. Okay, so you probably didn't see it at fast speed, but this stick here is a little bit narrower than I use my gauge with. So when I went to adjust it to the outside of this black line, I had a gap here. So I just cut me some 3/16 real thin and shoved them down in there and used some thin CA to glue that in on both of these. Same gap I had here is on the other one too, so I'll fill that the same way I did the other one with thin CA. So the right elevator is complete. I'm going to now seam together a couple sheets of, well, 4 sheets, 2 and 2, 1/16, and get them sanded smooth. And I want to stack them on top of the stab and match them up to the elevators. And if they are the same height, I'm going to go ahead and go with the 16th. If they're not, I'm going to wait on the 5/64. But I think if I'm good, then I'll just use the 16th on the rest of the plane, because I have a crap ton of it. So we'll get set up and seam some balsa. I know you've seen me do it in other videos, but I'll do one on this video just so that it's documented. So I'm going to start off like I always do by taking a sliver off of each edge, just so I know that my balsa is completely straight. And you don't want to put a lot of pressure on it, because if the grain's not perfectly straight, it'll drag the knife. Into the sheet. So that's one. I got 3 more to do. Okay, the next step will be to true up the edges, make sure they're square. So what I'll do is I'll take my T-bar, put it close to the edge so it doesn't like roll up. And I'll take the, while pressing down on the T-bar, I'll just take a few swipes with my permagrit. That way I know that way I know that edge was perfect. I think I dinged it. Let's take a few more swipes. All right. That's one. Got 3 more to do. The next step, we will join the sheeting. And as you can see by that procedure that I just did, you can barely see that seam there. And as I'm gluing these, I'm going to be pressing down with this finger, gluing with the other hand. And we're pressing the finished side to the table. This is the unfinished side. This will be the side that gets glued to the stab. Only if the thickness is what I like. This is just a test to see what's going to happen. So we'll get set up and we'll glue glue these sheets together. So I applied like 3 layers of masking tape to my spreading hand. That's the hand that's going to push down or spread the glue. So I'm going to start over here on the end. I'm going to use this hand to kind of squeeze the sheets together like this, and this hand will push down on that seam to make sure that it's on the table, and we will carefully apply some glue, hopefully in the seam. And then spread it like that. And move down, push down. Spread, push down as you're spreading it. Move down some more and push down on your next few inches. Spread it and push down. And just keep going. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing now, but basically the same thing. And that completes one set of sheets. Now we're going to take our 220 and sand it just lightly. I don't want to take too much off because I'm worried about the thickness. This is the unfinished side, so it's not really important anyway, but I like to give both sides a good sanding. And it'll be the only time that these sheets get sanded. I'll flip it over. This is the finished side. You want to always be careful when you're sanding. You don't want to be overly aggressive with it, and you want to sand in a crisscross pattern. This is I think 4 pound or 6 pound balsa, so it's very, very light, and you can literally sand it away really quick. So I'm happy with that. That's a finished side. Okay, so I checked the thickness against the elevator, and I'm happy with it. So we are going to use a 16th. This is the top, and this is the bottom. So I chose the knotty part for the bottom. I'm going to lay up some glue on this, flip it over, and we are going to get this glued together. I like to use T-bar sanders to to make it flat. So here we go. Carefully center this. And we are making progress. Now before I put that other one on, I'm going to trim this. Oh yeah. I'm happy with that. So let's trim these up. These will all get sanded smooth once I get the other side done. Okay, there's one side done, the bottom. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get this ready. The X means inside. You don't need to press really hard. Just hard enough to just, you know, make contact. Okay, so now we will trim that. When you're doing this, be careful that you don't glue your fingers to the sheeting, because there's still wet glue here. And there it is, one completed stab. So now I'm going to true up the edges here. Now I'm going to check fitment with the elevator. Dang near perfect. Oh, that's the bottom. Never mind. Hold on. Perfect. I'm not even gonna, I shouldn't do anything, but I'm going to. Now it's perfect. All right, there is one completed elevator and stab, minus the rounding, of course. we'll get to that. Dang, I wish I wouldn't have done that. That's going to definitely show through the covering, and I'm not sanding that. Well, there is the completed stab and elevators. That thing is huge. Biggest stab and elevators I've ever built in a plane. Next step is building the fin and rudder. Well, this will be the conclusion of the first episode of the Sukhoi SU26MX build series. I want to do it in steps. So this is the first group of steps. The next steps will be the rudder or fin and rudder, and then we'll do the rounding and hinging of both those. I'll probably do that in the same episode as the rudder and fin, so that'll complete the tail. So we're looking pretty good so far. Ran into a snag with my sheeting, so I had some 16th left over from my ultimate biplane build, so I went ahead and used it to finish off the stab and fin on the Sukhoi build. And not to mention, it'll be lighter. The tail will be a little lighter. So if you like this type of content and you stuck around this long, you probably do, please consider subscribing to my channel. Hit that notification bell so that you can be notified of future episodes of this build series. And be sure and like and share my videos. It just might help somebody get their airplane finished and in the air. So until the fin and rudder build, which will be episode 2, thanks for watching.